We welcome you back to this channel. In this video, we'll explore 3 experiences with possessed toys. A dancer doll that releases shadows, an ancient doll that becomes a growing threat, and a teddy bear that causes nightmares. Go ahead, turn off the lights, and let's take one more step into the world of the unknown.
Sinister smile.
I clearly remember that day from my childhood, a sunny afternoon that changed my life forever. I was 8 years old and usually spent my afternoons playing in the park near my house. It was a peaceful place, with a small pond, squeaky swings, and wooden benches worn down by time. That afternoon, while I was looking for flowers to give to my mother, I saw something that caught my attention: a teddy bear. The bear was sitting on the edge of one of the benches, seemingly abandoned. It had light brown fur, black button eyes, and a stitched smile that seemed charming to me at the time. Without thinking twice, I picked it up and hugged it to my chest. The plush had an air of antiquity, as if it had belonged to someone a long time ago. I decided to take it home, convinced it would be my new playmate. My mother didn't object when she saw the bear. She checked it for any tags with the owner's name, but found nothing. "I guess someone forgot it there," she said with a smile. "But if no one claims it, you can keep it." That night, I placed the bear on a chair next to my bed and fell asleep feeling lucky about my find. That was the first night I had the nightmare. I dreamed I was in a dark forest, surrounded by tall, leafy trees that seemed to whisper my name. In the center of the forest, I saw a figure, a blurry shadow that seemed to be watching me. I woke up startled, my heart pounding. I looked at the chair, and there was the bear, its stitched smile seeming wider than I remembered. Things started to get strange from that night on. Objects in my room moved around for no apparent reason. Once, I found my music box open and playing, even though I always kept it closed. My toys appeared scattered on the floor, even though I remembered putting them away carefully. And the bear? It was always there, with that enigmatic smile watching me. My parents began to worry when I started having panic attacks. I told them about the nightmares and the strange occurrences, but they attributed it to my imagination and my fear of sleeping alone. They decided I needed company and let me sleep with the teddy bear. They thought it would comfort me, but it only made things worse. One night I woke up in the middle of the darkness, opened my eyes and saw the teddy bear. Its button eyes seemed to shine with their own light. I tried to move, but I couldn't. The air became dense and a voice echoed in my head. A cold and distant voice that said my name over and over. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to scream or move. The bear stared at me, its smile now a malevolent grin. When I finally regained control of my body, I threw the bear across the room and ran to my parents' bedroom. Through sobs, I told them what had happened. This time, they saw the terror in my eyes and decided something had to be done. The next day, we took the bear to an antique shop, hoping to get rid of it. The store owner took the bear and examined it carefully. His eyes narrowed and his face darkened. "This stuffed animal is not what it seems," he said in a serious tone. He told us that this bear had belonged to a girl who had mysteriously disappeared in the forest many years ago. It was said that the girl's soul was linked to the toy, and that she sought company in her eternal loneliness. He advised us to burn the bear and scatter the ashes. That night, we did exactly that. I watched as the flames devoured the plush, its stitched smile distorting as the fire consumed it. The nightmares stopped after that, and the feeling of being watched disappeared. Years later, I still think about the teddy bear and the voice that called to me from the darkness. I never knew if the old man's stories were true or just a way to scare us. But something inside me tells me there was more truth to his words than I'd like to admit. Since then, I've avoided parks and abandoned toys, fearful of finding something else left behind for a reason.
Jack's curse. I remember every detail of what my son and I went through with an eerie clarity, as if it had happened yesterday. It all began with a simple toy, a gift for my son. It was my son Eric's birthday. He was turning 7, and I wanted to do something special for him. I had seen a small antique shop in the city center, a dusty and forgotten place on a dark street corner. I decided to go in, hoping to find something unique, something that couldn't be found in a modern store. The air inside was heavy and smelled of dampness. The shelves were full of relics from the past, old clocks, yellowed books, and vintage toys. One of them caught my attention. It was a wind-up doll, dressed in a striped suit and a top hat. Its glass eyes seemed to follow me as I moved. The shop owner, an old man with a raspy voice, approached me. He told me it was a very special toy with a long and peculiar history. He said the doll had belonged to a child a long time ago and had been made in a small village in Eastern Europe. I didn't pay much attention to the details. I simply thought it would be a nice gift for Eric. I bought it and quickly left the store, eager to see my son's face when he received his gift. Eric was delighted with the doll. We named it Jack. He wound it up and watched with fascination as it moved back and forth, emitting a strange, discordant melody. However, that night, things began to get unsettling. I woke up in the early hours of the morning to a strange noise. I got up and went to Eric's room. There, in the dim light, I saw Jack sitting on the bed, staring intently at my sleeping son. I approached and took it, placing it on the shelf. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that its eyes were following me. In the following nights, the noises became more frequent. Eric started having nightmares. One night, as I was trying to sleep, I clearly heard a voice in the hallway. I got out of bed and followed the sound to Eric's room. The door was slightly open, and when I pushed it, I saw Jack standing on the floor at the foot of my son's bed. Its glass eyes glowed with a strange light. I tried to get rid of Jack. I threw it in the trash, but the next morning, it was back on Eric's shelf. I took it to the woods and buried it, but that same night, I found it sitting on the dining room table. It seemed that the more I tried to get rid of it, the stronger its presence became. One night, Eric woke up crying, saying that Jack wanted to hurt him. I hugged him and tried to comfort him, but inside, my terror was growing. I decided that it was enough. I took the doll and brought it to the basement, determined to lock it away. The basement was dark and cold, a place we rarely visited. I found an old box and placed Jack inside, locking it with a padlock. However, as I climbed the stairs, I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew it wouldn't be that easy. That night, the screams became unbearable. They seemed to come from all over the house. I went down to the basement and saw it, out of the box, staring at me with those glowing eyes. I grabbed the doll and ran out of the house. Without thinking twice, I threw it into the fire of a bonfire we had lit in the garden earlier that evening. The doll writhed and screamed, emitting a cry that echoed in my ears long after the flames consumed it. I felt a heavy burden lift from my shoulders. From that night on, the whispers ceased, and Eric's nightmares disappeared. The memory of Jack and what it brought into our lives always accompanies me, like a persistent shadow in the corners of my mind. Sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, I still have the feeling that those glass eyes are watching me, reminding me that some decisions, no matter how innocent they seem, can bring unimaginable consequences.
The Ballerina.
I've always been fascinated by antiques. I love losing myself in secondhand shops and flea markets, searching for objects with history, things that have passed through many hands and hold secrets within them. It was a gray and rainy morning, ideal for getting lost among shelves filled with forgotten objects. The shop was in an alleyway I had barely noticed before. I entered and, as usual, began exploring every corner. That was when I saw it. The doll was in a glass case, separated from the rest of the items as if it had a special place. It was a ballerina with a white silk tutu, brown hair tied in a perfect bun, and blue eyes. Her delicacy and detailed craftsmanship immediately captivated me. I asked the shop owner about her, and he told me that the doll had belonged to a young ballerina who, after a tragic accident during a performance, decided to give up dancing and everything related to it. Something about the story and the beauty of the doll compelled me to buy it, despite feeling a slight chill that I attributed to the shop's temperature. I took it home and placed it on a shelf in my bedroom, where I could admire it every day. That night, however, things began to change. I slept deeply until a nightmare woke me up. In the dream, I was in an old, empty, dark theater. On the stage, a figure danced with elegant movements, but something about its presence filled me with terror. It was the doll, but life-sized, with its white tutu now dirty and worn. Her blue eyes shone with an unhealthy intensity as she spun and spun, and I couldn't move or look away. I woke up sweating, my heart pounding 1,000 beats per minute. I told myself it was just a nightmare, the result of hearing the ballerina's tragic story. But the next day, I found the doll in a different position. At first, I thought I might have moved it without realizing it, but every night the nightmares returned, and every morning, the doll appeared in different places. The worst were the shadows. They started as simple dark spots in the corners of my vision, barely perceptibly moving. But as the days passed, they became more defined and sinister. One night, while trying to fall asleep, I saw a long, thin shadow cross my room. It looked like the figure of a ballerina, with arms extended in a dance pose. Fear paralyzed me, and I could only watch as the shadow slid toward the doll, which watched me from its shelf with those cold blue eyes. Desperate, I tried to get rid of the doll. I took it back to the shop, but the owner refused to accept it. "That doll doesn't belong here," he said, with a look of genuine fear on his face. "It must be yours now." I tried leaving it at several other secondhand shops, but no one wanted to take it. My nights became hell. The nightmares grew more vivid and the shadows more persistent. One night, I woke up feeling a heavy presence on my chest. I opened my eyes, and there was the doll, sitting on me, its blue eyes shining in the darkness. I couldn't move or scream. I closed my eyes tightly, and when I opened them again, the doll was gone. I woke up the next day on the floor, and the doll was back on its shelf, staring at me. I decided I couldn't go on like this. I sought help in an occult shop, and they told me I needed to perform a purification ritual. I prepared everything according to the instructions. On the night of the ritual, I lit the candles and recited the ancient words while surrounding the doll with salt and protective herbs. At first, nothing happened, but then the shadows began to stir around me. I felt a pressure in the air, but I continued with the ritual, my voice trembling but firm. Finally, the candles went out abruptly and the doll fell to the floor, lifeless. The shadows slowly dissipated, and the room fell into a sepulchral silence. Since then, the nightmares have ceased and the shadows have disappeared. I placed the doll in a sealed wooden box and buried it far from my house. Sometimes I still feel its blue eyes watching me in the darkness of the night, but I tell myself they are just remnants of my disturbed imagination. However, a part of me knows that a curse never truly goes away. It only changes form, waiting for the right moment to return.
Thank you for journeying with us through the dark passages of these stories. If you enjoyed them, give us a like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss more tales of terror. Until next time, where fear will once again be your companion.